Carlos Nelson with What's Up Kansas City and Cascade Media Group. Today, we're featuring another one of our urban professionals. Who do we have here?
Hi, I'm Kirsten Brown-Persley.
Hey, Brown, you know the drill.
Yes. So I am the founding principal of Crossroads Preparatory Academy. It's a charter school in downtown Kansas City, and we're really focused on authentic learning experiences. Because we're right downtown in the heart of the city, we really leverage the community around us to provide opportunities for students to get engaged in civics, nonprofit work, and industry to better prepare them for the future that they want to make a reality for themselves.
Well, I want to get into that.
Yeah.
But more so, what I want to get into is who you are, who Brown is.
Yeah.
How did you get where you're at in your skill set, your education, your social and economic level? And what I want you to do is go back to your grade school, and I want you to talk to me about some of the people that help mentor you. And I will interrupt you every now and then to say, what did you learn from that? You'll name the person. I'll be saying, well, what specifically did you get from that person? Run it down, kindergarten on up.
Okay. So I was born in St. Louis, and I went to school in St. Louis early on.
What schools? Name the schools so that they know.
St. Mary Magdalene was the school where I started out in elementary school. And that was, it was a really, really small school, Catholic school. And later on, I transitioned into public schools in the St. Louis area and moved around.
What grade were you in?
When I moved?
When you went from Catholic to public, because I went to Catholic school in St. Louis back in the early 60s.
Okay.
And my mother had to convert and do all this other stuff.
Yeah.
But all I got was the ruler and the paddle. So, when you left Catholic school, what grade was you in?
I was in the 5th grade.
All right, that's me too. All right. So how did going to public school affect you versus coming out of Catholic school in your middle school years? Talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, so the Catholic school was really small, as I mentioned, and there weren't any kids of color. There were very few of us at the school. And so that was really difficult. I remember my first day of kindergarten, and none of the kids would play with me. And in kindergarten, that's your first point to be socialized, where you can really, meet a lot of kids outside of your home. And so I was kind of looking around the blacktop where all the kids played at recess, and just kind of searching for a friend, and would go up to students and be like, hey, will you play with me? And they're like, no, we don't want to play with you. So I'd retreat back and kind of look at all the kids and just wish I had a friend. Then there was a 1st grade boy, a little white boy, who came up to me, and I was like, oh my goodness, finally I have a friend. And he said, what are you looking at, blackface? And I was like, what? This is not what I was expecting, And so that was just kind of my experience early on, just like those feelings of being isolated. As time went on at that school, there were more Black students who entered, and so we all became friends and were a tight-knit group. But that was—
Tell me this. Like I told you, I would interrupt you this.
Yeah.
Because I'll forget.
Yeah.
In that experience, do you think that those classmates even thought about how you were feeling?
This is brought to you by Willard's Book and Vinyls.
If they did, they probably enjoyed it. You know what I mean? Like it was either intentional or unintentional, but if it was intentional, it was,
All right, because I asked you to be honest, like I asked all my guests to be, because we want to use our platform to come together with our brethren, white, Black, green, yellow, or whatever.
Right.
But if we can't speak with our own narrative and our own voice and really tell you the truth,
right,
you're not going to be able to consume it and see. This is coming out of your mouth. You're a young urban professional. You don't have any reason to fabricate. And it's not about race, but it is about race. And we have to give some forethought of how we're interacting, how our kids are interacting, if we profess to want to have a better society, I would think. And so I really appreciate, because you don't have to tell us those type of stories, but I think it's imperative for us to tell our story and let other people hear it. And the thing that goes with all of the, from high school to college to professionals, most of the kids have went to Catholic school and experienced some of the same things. Just in general, when you're in a predominantly majority situation.
Right.
Go. What was the change like when you went to public school?
It was interesting. So it was better. There were more students. And so I felt like I could find a fit, besides my tight group, which I love, but there were more options of friendships, and I kind of expand my horizons.
Did you know what you wanted to be? And what high school was it?
Yeah, so it was still in elementary school at that point. And so I didn't know, I loved writing. I thought I wanted to be a poet at that time. And so I remember there was like this, it was back in the early days of the internet. I saw a pop up for a poetry competition. So I filled out a poem, created one, and I actually won an award from this national poetry search. So I thought, yes, that's what I want to do. At that point, thought I wanted to become a poet. And so, the elementary school was really an interesting experience because the DSEG program was happening in St. Louis. And so
what year was this?
This was, oh my gosh, it had to be
approximately
2000, around the year 2000 or so, late 90s, early 2000s. And so I lived in St. Louis County, but they would bus students from St. Louis City into St. Louis County. And, majority of the students they bused in were Black students to, desegregate the schools in the suburbs out in St. Louis. And so it was interesting because a lot of the students who were bused in from the city just did not like me. They're like, why do you talk like that? Like, who are you? You live out here? Why do you live out here? And so that was a point of contention. And so it was interesting because whereas my last school, I had a lot of the Black kids were my friends because there were so few of us and we stuck together. In this situation, a lot of my friends became the white students. And it was just an interesting dynamic.
Yeah, more in common, probably.
Yeah. So that always stuck with me, just the dynamic and how it shifted so much, just based upon the setting I was in.
So move on up the line, going to high school, college.
Yeah. So when I was in 5th grade, I moved into a middle school called Parkway South Middle School, and that was it was great. Again, it was a bigger school, so many more students from different elementary schools pouring into one space. But then about halfway through that year, my dad got a new job and we moved to Omaha, Nebraska. And so, my friends are like, oh my goodness, you're going to be so popular there. You're always so cool here. When you get to Omaha, it's a small town, it's going to be great. That was not the case. So I went there and I went to another Catholic school called St. Stephen's there. And I just confronted more racism than I ever confronted in my life at that school.
Did you play any sports?
I ran track.
That's too. I like that.
Yeah. I loved running track.
How did you feel now that you say you did sports? Because I'm working with Dr. Brandon Martin, who's the AD over at UMKC, and he just formed with the athletic director of Arizona University, the first Black athletic Black athletic conference, with all the Black ADs in Division I belong to it. And because people don't understand that how sports transcends some of these race issues and need to be talked about. In track and field, what was that like?
Yeah, track and field is great. I started running in kindergarten. That was like my thing. I would run every summer. I'd run competitively. It got to the point where, my brothers and I, every summer we do USA track and field and AAU track and field.
Well, being from St. Louis, because we've had Jackie Joyner when she comes up to Kansas City, we've had extensive interviews with her on our sports network.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure her and her sister-in-law were idols of yours. I don't put words in your mouth.
No, they absolutely were. I had a FloJo Barbie doll that I still have in a box somewhere. I never took it out because it was such a valued possession. So absolutely. Yeah.
When you was there, what do you think all that racism, was it coming from the students or was it coming from the administration? Because in previous interviews, some of the students were saying they were having more problems, or they felt there was more problems with the administration than the student body. I don't know.
Yeah. So mine was definitely more students, although administrators did not intervene. It got so bad where my parents kept going up and trying to see what could be done that the principal's like, I don't know what to do. I can't help you. So by the end of that year, I had to be homeschooled because it was so bad. So my parents would pick up work at the end of the week, and I'd go and I'd work on a stack of work for the whole week. Then they drop it off and I'd pick up a new pack. And so I wasn't able to go to school just because it was weighing so heavily and it was just so incessant.
How do you feel that affects you psychologically as a human being, and especially as a Black person? And since you've reached some of the higher levels in education, how do you feel Europeans whitewashing history affects Black kids?
Yeah.
And what they learn in the books.
Yeah. So there's a book that's pretty popular out called Lies My Teacher Told Me, and it explores this idea of what happens when, just a lot of times education is different topics are taught from a Eurocentric perspective. And so as a result, students are not getting the full story or not getting the full picture. And that's
they're not getting any of the picture and
right.
the history that I know. You say the full picture.
Right.
They don't have a picture at all. From my perspective, when we interview a lot of them, and all of them lack any history about their forefathers. And I'm saying that's across the board. I don't care what school they went to, even the colleges. Why do you have to take Black history when all history starts with Black people in Africa?
Yeah, exactly.
That's where history starts.
Exactly.
And so when we're not having these conversations, speaking truth to power, I'm not just moving my damn lips in this interview. And you already said you had other things to do right now, but I think having this, putting it out there where some people can see and they can start having these conversations, and it all begins, like they say, it all begins with idea on some of the changes we want to make. It all begins with talking about, not talking at one another, talking with and engaging. And I'm sure some of the things that you have divulged in this short time we've been on, a lot of people wouldn't know about you and will take a different look at who you are. Because a lot of people think I'm arrogant and all kinds of stuff. It's because they just don't know me.
Yeah.
And when I met you, you might have had one how I look and perceive, but as you got to know me, did your perception change or what?
Yeah. So I think that's very true with everyone. It's like when you get to know their stories and their backgrounds and just who they are, I think oftentimes I feel a greater respect for people when you just understand the struggles and what they've been through and how they got to where they were. That's why I love reading autobiographies and biographies, just to hear about the struggle. And you may, especially even like historical figures, you may think and have some admiration for someone, but you really don't understand what they've gone through and what they're able to achieve despite those difficulties they faced.
You know, that's what I'm always throwing up in Black people's face. Because, see, I think we get in our own way more than the majority community and not working together. I'm always saying, most of y'all want to be like a Martin or a Malcolm or my teammate, John Carlos. I was in high school and he was in college, but in the summertime, I ran on a couple of relays with him. And so, you know, everybody wants to have their little bit of fame. So I always say my teammate, and we're close friends, real friends. And they want to be like these iconic figures, but they don't want to carry that cross. When John held his fists up, he was unemployable. His wife committed suicide.
Oh, wow. I didn't know.
Yeah, I'm saying when you don't know these personal stories.
Right.
You know, and I hadn't had contact with John like in 20 years, but he had come to Kansas City. The Negro League had bought him, and we got to talking. And I was saying, "Did you see this one and see that one?" And he was saying, "Yeah, when I go to different cities, different ones want to take a picture with me. You know, the iconic thing."
Right.
And they were athletes at the same time. Was at the Olympics and at different things, and they didn't speak out. John be telling them, "No, I'm not taking a picture with you."
Right, exactly.
You had a chance to speak up for your community and speak up for the underprivileged, and you chose not to. And so that's bringing this conversation full circle. That's what people that have integrity, that really understand what this struggle is about, they let it all hang out. Absolutely. Because they can't take your degree, they can't take what you have learned in wisdom and other things from you. And you're a perfect example. Sorry for being long-winded, but I think our audience need to understand where our programs are coming from, where the urban professionals or our students. It's a Black agenda.
Right.
And we want inclusion, but we don't want anyone creating our narrative or editing out our words to make them comfortable.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Floor is yours, darling.
Well, yeah, no, I think that's great. I think that's why I want to become an educator. That's why I do what I do, because I just see so much power and potential in the next generation. They are so social justice minded, and even when I was younger, we had, elements of that, but not even to like the extent that we're seeing now.
Money is not their God.
What was that?
Money is not the people you talking about.
No,
God.
No.
They understand the planet is at stake. They understand air, water, all this money spent on war. It's got to change.
Right.
And that's why I have that wave of the future with the college and high school, so that they can get their voice out. Don't tell me what the New York Times said. Don't tell me what the Daily News, any of them say. Look at the interview. Listen to what the kids are saying out their mouth.
Agreed. Absolutely.
All of them are on the same page, no matter whether they're in Maryland, DC, Washington State, or LA. When I'm interviewing them, it's like they almost using some of the same words.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And so I think that's important. Like, we have to lift up student voices. We have to lift up the generation of voices because I really believe, people always say, kids are the future. They're our future leaders. Many of our kids are leading stuff now. They're leading change now. And we have to recognize that.
Because of the state of Black leadership. And as I said, talking truth to power, I'm using their words. They say they don't want all these gray-haired people making decisions for them that they got to live with. Them people be dead. And our leadership don't know when to retire. They don't know when to get over in the corner and be emeritus. And that comes from, in my estimation, because they have been tied to the economics, and they like making them large salaries, heading up these organizations that are supposed to be representing Black people, but they're moving at a snail's pace, where these young people are saying, hey, we're not trying to wait on our pie in the sky.
Right.
We want it now, and it can be fixed now.
Yeah.
The program is brought to you by the Kansas City Business Association.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, you see that happening with what happened in St. Louis with Cori Bush, you know, like people kind of overturning the old guard because they are passionate about change now and they're not going to wait. And, you know, people have been in power for a long time. They haven't been able to see the change that they wanted to see. And so I think that there's a greater acceptance and willingness to let new people take charge. How
do you see Black people talking to each other, especially I'm not going to use bourgeoisie, but the upper crust bourgeoisie. How do you see us really looking at our situation in a practical way and coming up with problems that, I meant to say solutions that help systemically move us forward across the board, whether it's economics, housing, education, or what have you? Do you think that we have been serious in really creating a strategy, a workable strategy that has some timelines? You know, I just don't see us. We haven't come together. When it's the election time, everybody and then it's business as usual. So how do you see things changing, or do you see things changing?
Yeah, I think it's really important for change to happen for us to think of things in an intersectional, like from an intersectional perspective. So knowing just because, you know, maybe a group of Black folks who were talking, like, how are we considering different economic backgrounds, different geographical locations? Like, we have to consider all the intersections that make up our people. And so I think once we bring all of our people together from those different intersections, that's where change can take place, because it can nothing works if it's just top down. It has to be all people coming together, sharing their perspective, or at least representatives from different perspectives helping to create that change.
What would you say about, are you familiar with the Puffy and Ice Cube controversy?
Oh, is it? I think so. Is it about the Trump support?
Well, Trump support and all that. I push that all out the way, because the white people have the money, and then Trump is doing something with them, and that beats a blank. That doesn't mean they for Trump. They say we're with the Black agenda. It's just like I got the automobile, but if I don't have gas, that don't do nothing. So people criticizing them, or there are certain ones that don't have the Black agenda at heart. But Puffy did a interview with Charlemagne the God, and they got real serious for half an hour. And Puffy said we should have our own Black party and a third party. Now, we all know, well, that a lot of people wanted to have third parties, but they didn't see it working. Right. But that's not the same thing as having a Black party. Do you know why? I'm going to spell it out. When I came here in 78, Freedom Inc. was the powerhouse with the Black community. And you had the call paper. Every week it came out. And whatever was in the call, that's what the community was following, whatever way freedom was going. And whether it was a political idea or whether it was some other stuff, when it came to the elections, by the time the majority communities duked it out, Freedom had the Black block of votes that was going to decide the issue. And Puppy got it right. It came to my head as soon as I heard it. By the time the Republicans and Democrats bang it out, if we had our own party, that would give us economic strength, all kinds, because they would know that, hey, at the end of the day, they only interested in what's helping Black people. And we would be boycotting, and the only thing that affects America is economics. And if we put our economic dollar to work, changes the narrative. But you can't do that unless you're having these conversations.
Absolutely.
Because the people that's in power that's Black don't want to see that happen. Takes their power. And so I have these conversations with people like you so that you might have that conversation with your constituents. So that when they hear that notion, they're thinking about it in a different way. Not in the, and that's the problem even with the press, Brown, that you come through a training in a Eurocentric perspective. If you go to any of the journalist schools and everything, you're learning their perspective. It's just like, I don't say I'm a journalist. I know I'm not. Don't have no but communications, I know how to communicate. And I'm communicating in my voice, in a Black voice, a Black narrative. Because I don't know. It's like when you don't know no better, you don't know what you can do. So you wind up doing it. And that's been proven in history. Talk on some of this. I've held the stage long enough.
No, absolutely. Yeah, I think that, it's just really important for us to understand there's so much power when there are more options and more people who are able to provide perspective and fight for various things, because people get pigeonholed by, a two-party system where their own perspective or their own self-interests are not being represented adequately. I recently started to watch this show on Netflix called Borgen. It's a Danish show, but in Denmark, they have a multi-party system. And so it's a political drama, and it talks about, it's called Borgen. It has rave reviews. It's like has international acclaim.
I'm gonna look at it tonight.
Yeah, it's really good. It's a political fictional story about the first woman prime minister of Denmark. And it gets all into the political inner workings of a multi-party system. And you see how powerful it is when it's not just two people competing, but all different perspectives and all different wants and needs from the society. It is represented by multiple parties and the power that holds. And not one party holds on to so much. It's distributed so that more people are taken care of and represented.
They're teaching over there at Crossroads in the way of history and diversity and inclusion.
Yeah, so we use a lot of the Howard Zinn curricular materials, and he teaches something that is called a people's history. So it's not like a one singular story about what history is, but it really talks about groups who have historically been underrepresented in history classes. And I pop into those classes sometimes and I learn stuff that I'm like, oh my gosh, I never learned that. Maybe it's a college, or maybe I'm learning this for the first time, because only one story is generally told in history. And we're intentional about making sure that that's not the case and we're not perpetuating that cycle.
All right. Tell me this, what do you have planned for the rest of 220, and where are you going as principal and leader of Crossroads Academy for 221?
Yeah, so I'm currently pursuing my doctorate at KU. And so I'm getting my doctorate in educational leadership and policy studies, and I'm also getting my superintendent certification. And so I just believe in the power of change through education. I see it every single day, and I am more and more inspired and more convicted in this as my path to create widespread change. And I just want to make sure I'm the best I can, and I'm as prepared as possible to take on any position that will allow me to better make that lean into that reality and that goal.
What would you have to say, and we're going to wind this up, to any young, specifically Black girls?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So for Black girls, I think there's so much in the media and just in society that tells Black girls that we're less than worthy or we're not beautiful. And I just want to make sure that Black girls know that's not true, and Black girls are capable of doing great things. Black girls do not have to live within any limitations, and they can pursue anything they want. and live authentically and unapologetically. And I know that to be true. I see so many examples of that around me and in my own life. I see it in myself. And I just want Black girls to lean into that and not take no for an answer and go after all that they want to pursue in life.
And what would you say to the multi mixed generation in general, that inclusion thing, to our majority community with their kids and their, give us some thoughts on that.
Yeah, I've recently been so inspired by the anti-racist movement. Just so many people who maybe haven't thought about ways in which racism, is a part of their mindsets or a part of society, are really taking a critical look at that and are actively looking at ways to ensure that they're not a part of that. And in terms of their actions, and it's never foolproof, but I think the first step is acknowledging it and working towards becoming more anti-racist. And I see a lot of parents, especially white parents, taking the leap to ensure that their kids are engaging in these conversations about what it means to be anti-racist and how to ensure that they're not perpetuating that as much as possible. So that's been really encouraging.
Excellent. Well, it was a plum pleasing pleasure. I'm stealing Jim Watts's lines again. And as we always say, when you invest in your community, you're really just investing in yourself. Good night.
This is brought to you by the Black Archives of Mid-America.